This is Breakthrough 180, the show that celebrates the strength to start over. From second careers to bold pivots, we share the moments that change everything and the breakthroughs that reshape lives. Here's your host, Neal DiPentino.
Our guest today has lived a life few of us can imagine, from defending criminals in the wild Miami courthouses in the 1980s to now teaching mindfulness to students, executives, and everyday seekers at Elon University. Bob's journey isn't just transformational, it's a full 180. Please welcome to the show my good friend, Bob Martin. Hey, Bob, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Neal. Wow. Thanks for having me on. It's just a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Well, as you should be. I'm kidding.
No, being on a Neal DiPentino show is something to be excited about. Come on. Don't be humble.
One of my favorite things about you is like I think after one try, you got my name right. Like I can't even begin to tell you how many times people jack up my name, and like it's really funny. Usually they say DiPentino. They'll come up with something, but some people will actually add letters to it and like totally like. And people say, well, I'll tell them it just means it just means Smith in Italian. So I'll go with that. So if you want to call me Neal Smith, that's fine too. So hey, we got a lot to get into. You have made a real 180 transition in your life, probably more than just the one, but the one that we want to talk about today is the one where you came from a criminal trial attorney to now you are you're working with people, helping with meditation and not just in business and everyday life, that type of thing. So we want to kind of dive into that a little bit with you. So you had 4 decades as a criminal attorney, and that was during the cocaine cowboy era back in the 1980s. So down in Miami. So that had to be something incredible. You want to just give us a little bit of tell us a little bit about what that was like in those days.
Well, Neal, before I do that, I want to just tell you that there was another big 180, and I'll just touch on it for a second because I actually grew up in a carnival.
Okay, time out. Wait a minute. A carnival. Man, you amaze me. Every time I talk to you, there's something new. Okay, tell us about the carnival, then we'll talk about the attorney business.
Well, my dad was a United States immigrant from Hungary in the early part of the last century. And he was looking for how to find his way through into the American dream. And he discovered popcorn. It was a great new taste sensation from the Midwest in 1932. And he discovered it. He saw it. He smelt it. He turned around and said in his Dracula-like voice to my mom, these I can sell. There is nobody that would not like these. And so they took the money that they had saved up and they bought a popcorn machine and a caramel corn vat. And that's a whole story. It's a whole podcast we can get into. But there was that was a big part of my life and growing up in that kind of an atmosphere.
Wow. And so you're not originally from you live in North Carolina now. You're not originally from the South. You're originally from
No. I mean, you can hear me talking through my nose. I had to be from New York, right?
Absolutely. So I never told you this before, but I had a good friend of mine that I used to work with. His name was Walter Morris, and he was from Connecticut. And I mean, you guys you could be identical twins. You sound alike, you talk alike. And the funny thing he told me, everybody called him Walter. And he said, I didn't know until I was in grade school that there was an R at the end of my name. So, anyway, so that's kind of an interesting. That's the first one. So, what did you do in the carnival? I mean, obviously.
By the time I was 7 years old, I was taking the heads off of cotton candy machines and burning them off, and disassembling them and assembling them and taking off the caked on sugar. And by the time I was 9 years old, I was making caramel corn in a big copper vat.
Wow!
So it was an interesting growing up, but. And like I say, that's a whole story in and of itself. But I think the important piece and what I wanted to tell you was that I never in a million years imagined that I was going to wind up being a lawyer to begin with.
Yeah.
My biggest ambition when I was in my college days, my biggest ambition was to sell enough hot dogs on the boardwalk in Rockaway, Queens, New York, so that I wouldn't have to work in the winter.
Wow.
That was my biggest ambition. But there was this guy, and he kept telling me I should be a lawyer. It was the Vietnam days, and everybody was always arguing about Cambodia and Nixon and Watergate. And I was, a big arguer. And he kept telling me I should be a lawyer. So this guy actually went out and bought me the ticket to take the law school aptitude test.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I was a real mediocre student, and one law school took a chance on me. And yeah, so I went to law school, and I think that a big point that changed my life was the first day of law school. All the new students, and this wasn't even an accredited law school. They hadn't. It was brand new. Luckily, it was accredited by the time I graduated. But we're sitting around, and everybody's saying, "Well, what kind of a lawyer do you want to be?" And somebody says, "I want to be a corporate lawyer. I want to do this. I want to do that." And it came to me, and I didn't have a clue, and I just said, "Well, I want to be a judge." And Neal, I got to tell you, when the words came out of my mouth, all of a sudden it occurred to me that I might have an impact in this world. I just never
Hmm.
conceived of myself, as being in a position where I could make a difference.
Yeah.
And it was like a chill went through me when I said it. I said, "Nah, I could never really be a judge." And I never really was a judge, but yeah, that's what happened. And so I was able to intern in my third year of law school at the DA's office in Miami-Dade County, right in the middle of the cocaine cowboy days. We're talking Miami Vice days, we're talking Scarface days, all of
Mm.
those things. And so when I by the time I finished my third year of law school, I had 2 felony trials under my belt.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so they hired me right into a felony position instead of going through all of the misdemeanor and traffic stuff. I just had a great career. And this was in Janet Reno's state attorney's office. She
Oh, really?
eventually became the attorney general in the Clinton
Right.
administration,
Yeah. Yeah.
and rose up and got to be a main player in the economic crime and consumer frauds division. And we had this thing called RICO, which is racketeering, influence, corrupt organization, which allows you to go get the money of a corrupt organization, even if you don't have the evidence to prosecute criminally. So
Hmm.
we hit the mob for like over 70 million bucks. And shortly thereafter, I left the office, hung my shingle out, and lo and behold, Johnny, the southern branch of the Gambino mob, comes walking into my office and sits down right opposite me and scared the bejesus out of me.
I'll bet.
And I knew who he was,
Yeah.
I just, and he says, "You're pretty good. We got good lawyers, and you beat them. And we're going to send you some clients." And so had we had a real good conversation about expectations and what I would do and what I wouldn't do and the like. But all of a sudden, the clients started rolling in, and they
Well, let me
carry.
stop you just real quickly.
Yeah,
So this
yeah.
guy comes into your office, and obviously you know
Mhm.
who he is and everything, and he tells you, "I'm going to send you some clients." I mean, what was the first thing that went through your head when he said that?
Well, the first thing that went through my head is it opens up the whole door of, if he is going to send me a client that he's paying for, who's my client? My client has to be the client, not the person who pays.
Right.
So he has to have a good understanding of that. But his concern is that I don't flip them against the higher ups. That's what they're going to do. You got a good case against somebody. You say, "Well, if you turn on your higher ups and give me the next one up the ladder, I'll give you a break on your sentence."
Mm.
So those are some real big ethical issues. And I told him I wasn't going to do anything illegal and nothing unethical. And also that it was in his best interest to have a lawyer that was trusted and respected by the courts. And if I blew it one time, Neal, your reputation, especially, well, in a profession, but even in life, you can spend a lifetime building a reputation, and then one
Yeah.
minute, boom, it's gone.
It's gone.
You
Yeah.
know, you do
Absolutely.
one foolish thing. And so he understood that, and we had an understanding. And there are ways that you can deal with those questions ethically, but he had to understand the way that we dealt with it is whenever somebody would come in, and they would always carry in $9,000 in cash bills, efectivo, as they say.
Oh, wow.
Because if you have over 10,000, you have to report it to the tax authorities. So,
A little loophole there.
so we always kept it
I
under
like that.
10,000.
I like that. That's
Um,
funny.
and I would have a conversation and say to them, if they're thinking of flipping, then they probably would need to go to a different lawyer. But
Right.
what I quickly found out is that none of the even if I went to the client and said the state is offering you this deal, rather than going away for 15 years, they'll give you probation if you'll flip on your higher up. None of those people that came from Johnny would take the deal,
Uh, wow.
because they honored and wanted to protect their I don't know. I didn't get into that end of it. We're not going to talk about like
So you
what
get nose clean, you did what you were supposed to do and you moved forward and everything. Yeah,
right.
absolutely. So I mean, how long did you actually you had other clients as well, and how long did you actually work for Johnny? Or I guess I don't know
Uh,
if you call
well,
represent Johnny's people.
about 10 years.
Okay.
About 6 years, 6, 7 years,
Hmm.
and it all went well. But I need to throw something else in
Yeah.
here. Um, Legal, ethical, yes. Was my life in good order? No.
Yeah.
And remember, these were the cocaine cowboy days, and I'll be confessional here. I hung out with these guys. I kind of liked it was kind of sexy,
Yeah.
to be with these high rollers and stuff, and we go out to these chrome and glass Miami bars and do a lot of cocaine. And I was coming home at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning. Didn't pay attention to my family, my kids. Life was just barreling out of control. So it's important that's an important piece, because I was seeing a therapist, and here's where that 180 comes about.
So now the light
Now
switch went
comes the
on, and you
switch.
said, I got to make a change.
Well, I went to my therapist, and this is exactly what happened. I said to him, I came to a point, I had already paid my house off. Already paid my house off. I was
Wow.
32 years old, right?
Oh, wow.
And I was investing in all these crazy things, because when you're under the influence of those chemicals, you think that you're invulnerable and there's nothing you can do is going to have bad consequences. You just
Right.
have crazy fantasies. And I was investing in stuff. I was losing the money as fast as I was making it. And I said, George, do you think I ought to refinance my house in order to support this pipe dream I have? So I figured he was going to come back at me with something like, well, Bob, what do you think you should, typical
Yeah.
therapist stuff. But he didn't. He picked up 3 coins and started shaking them in his hands and dropping them on the table and adding numbers up and making strange lines. And I'm thinking that my therapist has become like a soothsayer. At what the F is going on here?
What's going on there? Yeah.
He finally comes up with a solution, and he writes down this number, and he opens up this big book to that chapter number, and the name on the chapter is Retreat. And I cursed him out, and I thought he was a soothsayer, and I walked out. But it was like I didn't just see the word, it was like tattooed on my forehead.
Huh.
You got to retreat, you got to back
Uh,
off. And
right.
so I started backing away from some of those excessive behaviors, and I went back to him. And I said, George, what was that you did? And he says, well, Bob, that was the I Ching, the classical book of changes. And I said, well, what's that? And he says, it's a Taoist practice. And what's Daoism? And Neil, I got to tell you, my dad was Hungarian royalty, and the Bolsheviks wiped out all of his family.
Mm.
My mom was Roma Gypsy, and the Nazis and everybody wiped out their entire family. And so I grew up in a home where we didn't practice any religion. They just didn't feel there was a God that was worth worshiping. Although my dad was a very virtuous and fastidious man, there was just no talk of religion. And so all of a sudden, I'm 32 years old, and somebody is introducing me to this new form of a system of living. And I found out that my therapist was the English language editor and one of the top students of a 72nd generation Taoist grandmaster from the Shaolin Temple, the Kung Fu Temple.
Yeah.
72 generations of handing the wisdom down from father to son. And this guy's name was Watching Knee. And next week, Watching Knee came to Miami, and I met him, and nothing was ever the same since.
Wow.
I mean, he was just one of those best way that I can describe meeting him would be this. When you and I talk, we're looking at each other's eyes.
Hmm.
His eyes seem slightly out of focus, but like they were focusing on something 3 inches behind my eyes.
Huh.
If that makes any sense. Like you got this feeling like he looked right into you.
Right.
And like I say, Daoism has a lot of practices. One of them is learning how to go with the flow. That is the basis. That's the fundamental.
Hmm.
Learning how to go, being able to recognize the nature of the flow. Like, are you on a calm river, or is it like white water, or are you going towards a waterfall? And how to align yourself appropriately so that you can interfere the least and use the least amount of energy and live effectively and efficiently and virtuously.
Well, let's
And
take a
that's
step back just real quick if we can, because we've obviously made this 180 turn pretty
hmm
quickly. And I've known you for a little while, and you're not the kind of
hmm
guy that makes a decision easily, not the kind of guy that makes a snap decision. It takes you a
hmm
while to kind of like contemplate things and look at both sides of it. So obviously, you were in a situation where you were kind of rethinking your position as an attorney and what you were doing in that particular and how you were living your life. So when you met him, did things just like turn immediately or did it take some time? Did you resist? What was that like?
Yeah, the Dalai Lama was once asked, how difficult is it to change? And his answer was, change doesn't take any effort at all. It happens in a moment. It's very easy.
Mm,
However, the preparation for change can take years.
right. Okay.
And so, yes, the change was immediate, but I had been going down the rat hole for months on end. My life was falling completely apart. And in that way, my life is just like everybody else's life who takes a 180. You start to hit bottom and you say, I got to do something about it. And there's no
Hmm.
difference between my life. My facts might be different. My database might be different. My experience is different. But in terms of what drives you to change your life, it's usually either great fortune or great tragedy. And
Hmm.
I was blowing it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I was blowing it. So when you meet somebody who immediately you trust that they have the answers, they have something that you don't have. There's something that's on the other side of the complexity that you need to go through.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. I was immediately devoted, and I
Amazing.
studied under him for 8 years.
8 years. Wow.
Um, and and then, like magic, something happened between me and Johnny. And what happened was that his son got arrested.
Oh, well, let me
Eh,
back up here. So now you were like studying while you were still an attorney.
right?
Oh, okay.
Oh yes.
Wow.
hmm
Well, that had to be
And
a little bit
so,
of a conflict in your head, I would imagine, in your heart.
um, well, a lot of people say, like, how can you do that? How can you represent these monsters? And how can you do that? And I think what people need to understand, especially about criminal defense attorneys, is that the police and the prosecutors enforce the law, and their goal is to keep society safe from criminals. Defense attorneys prosecute the Constitution. We stand for democracy and justice, and to protect the people from the overreach of the government. So when I represent some dirtbag, I may not exactly be doing it for the sake of the dirtbag. I'm doing it for the sake of our rights and our
It's
freedoms.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so it can be a very high calling.
Right. Right.
And then fortunately, there have been a lot of conflicts, and there's a set of rules and guidelines about how to deal with difficult ethical issues.
Sure. Sure.
And so, so you can do
But
that.
But you were trying to make this transition during the time all this happened. And then let's
Yeah,
get back to where you said Johnny came in and Johnny's son had been arrested.
right. And so he said, now you're going to do what I need you to do. You need to win this, period. You need to do whatever you need to do. He wanted me to create evidence, to coach witnesses, suborn perjury, whatever is necessary to get his kid off. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And he said, Bob, I really suggest you rethink that decision.
Oh, wow. That wasn't a
So
scary moment at all, was it?
that was a very difficult moment in my life. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But it, by happenstance, I was driving up to New York. My ex-wife her folks lived in New York. We were driving up, and it was springtime, and we passed through North Carolina, and the azaleas were blooming, and the dogwoods were out. And I just looked around and said to her, "Hey, let's move here."
Oh.
And I went back and I said, "Johnny, I'm moving to North Carolina." And he said, "Sometimes a man has to move on. This way we can part friends." And so look at all the cool things that just kind of came together at one time. So I'm introduced to this system of living. I'm being well versed in it. I have to move, and I'm going to move to a place where nobody knows me, and I have no history, and I have a blank canvas where I can rewrite my life.
Wow. Yeah.
How cool is that?
It had to be a little bit different from the streets that were not streets, but the nightlife of Miami and the lifestyle that you were living to go to
I would
North
say that,
Carolina.
yeah, there was a difference because I went from prosecuting multiple homicides and defending uh, terrible things, drug traffickers and the like, and to my first case in North Carolina was for some guy who shot a deer with no antlers.
That is a little bit different, right? That had to be a really interesting time for you. I can't even imagine what that was like. But
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about,
no,
a total wind down, right? Just
oh yeah,
like you said, the retreat, right?
yeah. So it's 5 o'clock, third day at work, 5 o'clock. The boss comes walking down. I went and got a job as a DA in a small town in North Carolina. And the DA, I'm an assistant DA. The DA comes walking by at about 5:10, and I'm sitting there working because that I worked 70 hours a week in Miami, right? I'm working. He goes, "Bob, what you doing?" Well, I'm just kind of boning up here on some North Carolina law, boss. And he goes, "Bob, it's 5 o'clock. You need to be home with your family." Yes,
Like, how about
sir.
what I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, what are you gonna
Yeah,
do, right?
it was something
That's
else.
funny.
It was a
That's
big change.
funny.
It was a big change. I went to copy something, and I'm coming out of Chrome and Glass Miami of the '80s. I went to copy something, and the head of the copy machine went, "Whoop." I go, "Oh my, oh my."
Oh gosh, where am I at? I'm not in Kansas
Yeah.
anymore, right? Or
No,
Miami.
I got to tell you, the funniest thing was the moment I turned my TV on for the very first time in North Carolina. This guy that looks like Horse Cartwright with big 10-gallon white hat and the map of North and South Carolina behind him with a bunch of little stars all over the map. He looked straight at me in the television. He goes, "You need to get yourself a truck."
Uh, and did you?
No,
No, you
but
still
I
don't drive
said,
a truck.
"Where
You
am I? Where
Where
am
am
I?"
I? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So let's move forward again. You were
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so we're talking about the mindfulness and how you
Hmm.
made that transition. And then, so obviously, when you're in North Carolina, you're continuing to learn and to practice. And then at what point did you decide that it was like that you needed to teach to help others?
So there's not a lot of Taoists in North Carolina, but
I
there
would
are
imagine.
Buddhists.
Okay.
So my natural inclination was to start going to Buddhist ceremonies and temples and services and things like that, and kind of continuing my exploration of that whole Eastern type of thinking. Now, Taoism is much more motion, like Tai Chi, Kung Fu, Qigong, and contemplative. It's not meditative. Buddhism is much more meditative. So we meditated a lot. And after a couple of years, a couple of the folks came to me and they said, "We think you would be a good teacher. We would like you to take the the course to learn to be trained to be a teacher. And it is in the Vipassana tradition. It is very rigorous. 2 years, 30 minutes a day, weekly talks. What we call talks about how life works and things like that. A lot of essays and research and practicums, and 4 silent retreats a year over a 2-year period. So it's very intense. And I came out the other end and was certified as a teacher. And I thought that, oh, that's funny. I'm sitting on the cushion at one of the retreats, and all of a sudden it occurs to me that meditation is the cure for all of the world. And I couldn't even sit still. I went to talk to one of the teachers about it. He just told me to get back on the cushion. And so I tried, but it's very hard to the Western mind to say, well, how do you teach meditation? Well, you got to come every week and sit for 20 minutes and walk for 20 minutes and sit for 20 minutes. And then, you'll figure it out and the practice will teach you. And it's all way too vague, and it doesn't have any finite limits and no time commitments. So, I struggled with trying to teach it for a while until I retired from criminal work. And that was in 2015. And immediately, Elon University hires me as a law professor. And they have a spiritual center on campus. And I went over there and said that I'm interested in meditation. And they said, oh, you must do Koru. You must know Koru. And I go, I don't know Koru. What is Koru? Oh, it's this thing that Duke University came up with. So Duke University had been struggling with the same struggle that I would had, but they had, 4 different departments working on it. And they developed a way of teaching meditation where I can actually make more progress with somebody's understanding of their own thinking. I can make more progress in 5 weeks than normally under the old traditional methods would take a couple of years. Mm-hmm. They created a digital infrastructure, and they can say, now I can say to somebody, I can say, give me 1.5 hours a week where I can teach you techniques. I'll give you an app. I want you to practice on the app 10 minutes a day and write a small log. But the beauty of it is that the way they've created it, when you write the log, that comes to my dashboard. I get up at 4 o'clock every morning, Neal, and I have 15 or 18 students at a time, and I read all of their logs, and then I respond to their logs with daily coaching. A little twist, a little change, a little different paradigm, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. Let's not use this word, let's use this word. But that goes back to their app, and they get that before they have their next session. So every single day, they're getting coaching that's individualized, and it's from me personally. It's not AI. So, you brought people along doing podcasts and teaching them the like, and that if you meet with them once a month or once every week, then half the time is spent going back what you talked about the last week.
Right.
But if you had some way to easily communicate with them for each of their little travails every single day, even if it's just a little 5-minute tweak, can you imagine how much quicker they would get a hold of the techniques? And so I see incredible change occurring, inside of 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I just see people's whole way of thinking changes. And one of the reasons why, of course, is that there's a lot of misconceptions about what meditation is. So the first couple of weeks is helping people understand what it is and what it isn't.
So let me ask you, so is meditation specifically a religious thing, or is it
Not at all?
Not
No,
at all.
matter of
Okay.
fact, if you're teaching it on a college campus, it better be secular.
Okay.
Unless you're on a religious campus. But no, it can be spiritual. I often say, like, same as yoga. A lot of people think yoga is Hindu, or it's got some religious, but
Right.
it's taught all over the place, and it's taught secular.
Right.
But I often say with yoga teachers, what they do is they start with the body, and then the discipline of the body begins to discipline the mind. And then when that starts to happen, it opens up some space, and invariably people start to feel connected to something bigger than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If they are Christian, then they start to feel more connected to Jesus and God. If
Mm-hmm.
they are non-religious, they start feeling more connected to the universe,
Right.
more connected to some undefined kind of energy that flows through us and connects us.
Right.
But when you create a little space in your thinking, um, it's there's room for beauty, there's room
Yeah.
for awe,
Yeah.
and those are the
Yeah.
things that change you.
It's amazing. So about 2 years ago, I'm Christian. A
Hmm.
couple of years ago, I started a whole new process of getting up early and meditating and praying, and I do it every day. And I've
Hmm.
done it, and I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm just telling you this is
Hmm.
my routine and what I
Yeah.
do, and it has changed my life tremendously. But
Hmm.
the thing is that I kind of do it my way. I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. I don't know if there is a right or a wrong way to meditate and to pray. But I know I can honestly tell you from my personal experience that it has changed my life tremendously. It's changed my relationship with my family, with my friends, in my business, with pretty much every bit of my life. So what you're saying, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me.
Hmm.
From my perspective, anyway.
No, no, you're absolutely right, and there is no right way. In the Christian realm, the meditation is something that they call centering prayer. Um, and the centering prayer, the instructions are basically, for this next few minutes, you choose a word that's sacred. It could be love, it could be grace, it could be God, it could be whatever you choose, and you say, I'm going to use that as my anchor. And then you open yourself up to the presence and action of God in your life. You make an
Mhm.
intentional decision to open your heart to the action and to the presence and action of God, and then spend a little time with that intention. And then, of course, your mind wanders; it goes nuts. It starts thinking about the stove and what I got to do tomorrow. And
Yeah.
then you use that sacred word as your anchor. You just say grace, and
Ah,
that brings you back to the intention. And what most people don't realize, they think that when your mind wanders and you come back and begin again, that that's a bad thing and it's a failure. But that's actually the mental equivalent of doing a bicep curl. When you notice that your mind has wandered and you come back and begin again, inside of your brain, it's no different than being thrown off a horse and getting up and getting back in the saddle.
wow.
And you do that again and again. And what happens is it develops a certain kind of inner strength that I can do this, a sense of self efficacy. That if I get thrown in life, I can get back in the saddle. I can begin again. I can begin again. So the mere practice of beginning again is actually where the healing occurs.
That's
If
very
your
interesting.
mind
Yeah.
doesn't wander and if it doesn't go nuts, you don't get the benefit of being able to begin again. And it
Yeah.
is in the beginning again and starting over that you build up those muscles so that when life throws some crap at you, it knocks you down and you just say, oh, I can just begin again. And you
That is
have
so
that
amazing. I
sense of
like that.
resiliency.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
that
like that.
that's actually where the benefit of and what that sense of resiliency does is it opens up space, and when the space is opened up, you have more room to experience beauty and awe. And beauty and awe actually neurologically changes the inner workings of your brain. In fact, they are now examining and are pretty sure that awe is the positive face of PTSD.
Hmm.
The sense of, because when you experience trauma, it changes the wiring of your brain immediately.
Mhm.
When you experience awe, it also changes the wiring of your brain, but in a different way. And so, um, for those folks who decide that this isn't the time that they're going to sit and take up the practice of meditation, I simply say to them, curate your environment, put beauty in your environment, have things are out there, and take the time to put yourself in the place where you can experience awe and reflect on it and allow it into your life. And it will, well, you've experienced, if you pray every day, you have had times when you have been filled with that sense of energy that comes, that's indescribable, that sense of awe, right?
Yeah,
You
100%, 100%. Yep.
and that is what like ties it down and changes you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. We're getting kind of close to the end of our time together, but I don't
Hmm.
want to. I want to talk about a couple other things. Let's move forward just a little bit.
Okay.
Now, you've been practicing. You've been a teacher of meditation, and but you've also written a couple books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the first one was Children of Abraham, and
Hmm.
then I am the way. So
Hmm.
let's talk about those just shortly, briefly, if we
Oh, sure,
can,
sure.
and tell us a little bit about those.
Well, obviously, having grown up in a non-religious family, then being introduced to, and I'm not going to say that Taoism is religious because it's not God-based.
Hmm.
It's virtue-based and it's energy-based. But anyway, so the question of religion has always been interesting to me. And especially, it's always been interesting to me about how people can claim to have certain beliefs and then not act in accordance with them.
Hmm.
That confuses me, especially if you believe in a God. And so when 9/11 occurred, and for all these centuries, people have been going around killing other people in the name of God. I was thinking, if there is a God up there and he speaks English and he thinks in English, he might be looking down and saying, "Yeah, not exactly what I intended for you guys."
Hmm.
So the children of Abraham is a thought experiment of what would happen if God made His presence known. Would it really change anything anyway? And so I bring God down. People are watching television. All of a sudden, the little scroll comes across the bottom of their TV screen. You're all my children, God. And initially, the whole world thinks it's a big hoax. But I've got a Christian, a Catholic, a Christian, with same thing I understand, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Jew, a Palestinian. They're all my different characters. And how does this map onto their interplay? And how does it start changing them, if it does? And, I'm not going to spoil it. That's
Okay.
the question. Would it
Interesting.
change
Yeah.
anybody's behavior, or would they just compartmentalize it? Like Johnny would probably say, that's fine that God is down here, but as long as he takes care of his business and lets me take care of my business, we can we can be friends.
You do that very well. Oh, jeez. Uh, that's
um,
funny.
so that's I am the way. And then the other one, not I'm sorry, that's Children of Abraham. And with my background, my wife, my first wife, and I parted companies because we grew apart. And I married my second wife, and she is a Bible literalist, recovering Southern Baptist. And she thought all my stuff was just weird and woo-wee, and I couldn't buy her science. The world is 4,000 years old, etc. But she is a saint, and she is the most lovely person. And if somebody's in need or somebody's hurting, she will go and move into it. And she would be surprised if anybody thanks her for it, because for her, well, of course it had to be done. It's just how she is.
Hmm.
And we met on our values, and we shared our values, but we didn't share our philosophy or our cosmology. But I started taking the writings that are intrinsic to Taoism. I mean, in Christianity, you have the Bible. In Taoism, you have something called the Tao Te Ching, which is the classical book of the way of virtue. And I started taking the little paragraphs of chapters. Chapters are 2 paragraphs each. Started taking those and seeing if I could reimagine them in Christian terms. So I showed it to her, and she goes, "Oh, well, like no duh." When she read it, in terms of not the Tao, but the Lord, not this but that. I'll give you a little example. Lao Tzu says that as far as being a leader goes, when your work is done, you should step down because it's the work that's important, not the man. And when Jesus finished his work, he ascended. He left the situation so that his work would endure. And so it was easy to find parallels, and I started to write them. And finally, I did all the 81 chapters of the Tao Te Ching, reimagining them in Christian terms. And I call the book I Am the Way because the Tao translates to the way. So maybe Jesus was actually saying, I am the Tao.
Wow. Well, it leaves a lot of, it's kind of open-ended. We're going to have to probably leave it open-ended. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Hey, listen, we have come to the end of our time together. You've been like very interesting. You've had a very interesting life and a very interesting career. You're an interesting guy and a really good guy. So I've really enjoyed the friendship that we've developed over the last year, really almost.
Thank you.
Since it's almost been a year now. It's amazing how time flies, right? One of the things I like to do on my show is we call it rapid fire questions, fun with rapid fire questions. So these are questions that, you don't know I'm going to say, you don't know that I'm going to ask the question. You know what they are, right? And I didn't, send you any kind of information on this prior. So I just want to kind of go through this with you. And I want to get your reaction to these questions. And these are going to be short, quick answers. Okay. Sometimes just one word. All right. So here we go. We got 3 or 4 of them. The first one is, what is your favorite place to meditate and reflect?
Sunrise, wherever.
Sunrise wherever. So it doesn't matter anywhere in the world, just as long as sunrise.
Sunrise.
There's something about sunrise that's really cool.
Yeah,
I mean, I pray and I meditate in the morning. It's not very sunny where I'm at, but and I like it. I like the dark. When I'm actually so that way I can just everything around me is just gone. It's just me and the Lord. Okay, so let's see. What's one thing? What is one of the most surprising things? Let me back up on that one. What is one of the most surprising things you've learned from one of your students?
From what?
From one of your students.
That being in the present moment can take away a past full of fears and a future full of catastrophizing.
I have no idea what that means.
I had a student who was terribly troubled by traumatic past and was always looking forward and didn't think that she had a chance or the right to be happy. And when I could finally work with her and get her into feeling her body and being in the present moment, all of a sudden she wasn't crying anymore because she wasn't in the past, she wasn't in the future. She was here right now, and there was nothing dangerous in the room.
Yeah.
And she realized, then she got what it meant to be present.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. So if your life had a soundtrack, what would that soundtrack be? What would that song be?
Mama told me there'd be days like this.
Yes, she did. Absolutely. I love that one. And then the last question I have for you, what is the one guilty pleasure that you have that brings you joy?
Chocolate.
Love some chocolate. Any particular chocolate?
Huh?
Like M&M's, Hershey, dark chocolate. Yeah. Well, at least it's healthy chocolate. That's good.
Yeah.
Good for you. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you being here. And folks, hope you listen to this whole thing. I mean, from courtroom drama to contemplative stillness, Mr. Bob Martin, man, he's got it going for him. He's made that 180-degree turn. And Bob, we are so happy that you chose to be with us today.
What a pleasure, Neal. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Until next time, keep on breaking through. Have a great day and God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.